I'd like to introduce the people that will be running our program tonight. The guy with the power will be my friend Casey Zeman here. He's going to be our timer. So he's your friend to keep these people from talking too much. You know how politicians are. They have a lot to say. So please respect our timer and the time frames that he'll be showing you. Our moderators tonight are Mary Burkett and Nick Lang. Mary is the vice chair of the Republican Party here for Washington County, and we really appreciate her participating. She's also a former chair of our organization, so we are glad to have her. And Nick Lang, who's a former chair of the party and our current vice chair of our organization, the Dixie Republican Forum. So we appreciate Nick putting this together. So I'm going to turn the time over to them. They'll tell you about how we're going to proceed with the program, and we'll get started in hearing from the candidates. Nick and Mary, go on.
Welcome to the public. And you guys are welcome too. Thank you for coming. Dan MacArthur used to tell us that anyone that wore a tie after the end of February need to have it cut off. I noticed that all the gentlemen are wearing ties. So if you want to remove it, it's kind of warm in here. If you want to remove your tie, feel free. I took Dan's advice and did not do that.
Where's my hat on?
We've got a series of questions, and let's see, Larry, did we pass those out yet?
Whatever you tell me.
Why don't we go ahead and pass out? We wanted to get questions from the audience. Mary and I spent a couple of hours together putting together some questions that we thought about. From talking with the Spectrum organization and talking with people at the city, and also getting a copy of the city budget that will be going into effect on July 1st. We came up with some questions, talking with some people at Chamber, coming up with some things. But what we really want to do is if we can get some feedback from you folks, because you're the ones that are going to be voting for them. I think one of the reasons they chose me to do that, to moderate this with Mary, is because I'm not a citizen of St. George. I was born here, but I live in Santa Clara, and so I'm nonpartisan here, okay? So the first question we're going to ask you, if you can spend 1 minute each in talking about it. Let's start here with Mark and just go on down to Brian. 1 minute, tell us about yourself and specifically what is unique about you that will contribute to the city council. Mark?
Well, good evening, St. George. My name is Mark Stallings. That's Mark with a C, which rhymes with vote for me. I bring over 30 years of business experience to the council. Would love to. Wide background of problem-solving skills. I think I really can represent a large and wide diversity of our population. Big ambassador for our Huntsman World Senior Games. I believe I'm one of the only competitors with a child in elementary school. And I truly, truly love St. George. I love the Dixie spirit. I really look forward to helping shape, form, run this city with our population projections over the next 5, 10, 20 years. They are a little bit concerning. So I really feel we need to start planning now in a number of different areas. Look forward to working hand in hand with the Planning Commission and a lot of the committees and commissions. You may not vote for me in November, but in 53 days from today, on August 11th, I would really like to ask for your vote.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Betty. I'm your current city councilwoman, and I'm fiscally conservative. I am a defender of the arts. I'm fiercely loyal to our city. And according to my children, I watch maybe a few too many World War II movies and have a few too many starfish, or sea stars, as they're calling them now, in my home. I've got a lot to say about our city, so I'll just start. First of all, St. George has a $57 million budget, is #1 nationally, been named for outdoor activities for the retired, has our own power, and we have purchased power for 10 years out. We have sculpture pieces that are very delightful in our downtown. We have fantastic and competent employees in our city. We will soon have an all abilities park that will make every one of us very proud. We recycle our wastewater and turn that into water that we can put on our golf courses and our parks, which is not municipal water. We have sports facilities that can't be beat, an award-winning police force, and a very fantastic fire department. And we boast clean and manicured roads that are probably unparalleled in any city you will ever find. You can tell I love this city, and I love the people in it, and all of its diversity. And I love our trees. I think they're beautiful, and they set us apart in so many different ways. I'd be very honored to continue to be your councilwoman. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Eric Hovland. My wife and I are the owners of Urban Renewal in the downtown St. George in the historic J.C. Penney building. We've been working together on the store for 8 years. My wife and her mother started it 15 years ago. I work there daily and have an opportunity to meet with many people in the community and many visitors to the town. So I meet about 100 people a day and talk to them about the city and their viewpoints of St. George. And I think that my candidacy is a good opportunity to bring some of those viewpoints forward and explore some different ideas and different directions for the city. A quick background, I was born in Minneapolis. I studied architecture at the University of Minnesota. I paid my own way through college. In order to do so, I taught violin lessons. Together with my mom, Mary Hovland, we started Hovland Conservatory. And to the detriment of my architecture career, within 10 years, we had 12 locations in Minneapolis and Phoenix and taught thousands of kids music lessons each week. Even today, it's one of the premier music schools in the country. In the late 90s, I started eHealth Information Design, a software development company, and we focused in many industries, but mainly medical software, working with brain injury and stroke rehabilitation. So I want to take that experience with ideas and leading a technology, and I think I'm an idea person. I think bringing some new ideas and some new focus and some new energy to the city council, and also my extensive familiarity with the people of St. George, and I think that would be a reason that I'd be good for the city council. Thank you.
My name is Lane Rano. Thank you for being here. It's a great opportunity to visit with you for a few minutes. I was born in Cedar City. I hope you don't hold that against me. I love St. George. My wife and I moved here because she wanted to live here, and she loves the people. I want to tell you just two things in the opening statement. A man told me once, it's not what you've been, it's what you've done. I want to tell you about two things that I've done in the past. I was the director of building and zoning enforcement for Salt Lake County for 4 or 5 years. I immediately cut the budget by 30%. We did 60% more volume of service to the builders and the homeowners in Salt Lake County. Budget cutting, efficiency. The last gig I had was in California. Please don't hold that against me. Those third world countries need all the help they can get. I was the chief financial officer for the Porterville Sheltered Workshop. When I went to work there, the executive director told me, or gave me a copy of the balance sheet, and I said, why didn't you tell me this before you hired me? They were overspending their revenue by $100,000 a month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're in the debt, $1,600,000 long-term debt. When I left 10 years later, the budget had been doubled, no debt. They had $5.odd million in the bank. Now this is a California not-for-profit corporation. From debt to no debt, well-managed fiscally. Vote for Lane Rano in the primary and the general election. Thank you very much.
Jimmy, your time starts.
Don't start it yet.
I'm just kidding, Casey.
Jimmy Hughes,
Start now.
I'm going to stand because I don't want to lean over this microphone. You two better watch out. I'm kind of a hands talker, so you might get smacked.
I'm a tripper, so you watch it.
I'm currently on the city council. I've been on the city council since 2011. I admire these people who are up here. I think all of them are first-time campaigners for this office. Been there, done that twice before getting elected. or the second time I was elected. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're willing to serve. Be careful what you wish for. Kind of a fast talker, so I'll get going, but it's all true, so don't worry. I have been privileged to serve on the city council, and I am very honored to represent you. What's unique about me, which is what the question was, I think out of all of us up here, there might be only a couple who were actually born in St. George, and we're becoming kind of a smaller and smaller group as the city grows. We have a diverse community. Lots of new people have moved in. Lots of different ideas. Lots of things going on. Lots of growth. Lots of issues with water, roads, streets. I've been happy to be a part of that and help to make wise decisions on that. As far as me personally, my wife is here. She's sitting in the back. We have 5 children. The oldest is 17. Youngest is 7. She has to remind me. I don't know when we got married either, but one of my motivations for running, as I've always said, is because of my family. I want them to be able to enjoy the quality of life that I enjoyed growing up here. I know it's a little different because we're a bigger city. As a member of the city council, currently sitting here and running for re-election, it's a little strange to me because I've always been on this side of the aisle. But I look at it as kind of a report card. I'm hoping that people appreciate what I've done and will show that appreciation by voting in the future. Personally, as far as what I've done business-wise, I was a mortgage broker for many, many years for a Fortune 500 company. I then became a politician. I just moved the two together and became a mortician. So in 2011, I went back to school, got a degree. I'm now the owner and funeral director at Heidemann Hughes Mortuary, soon to be Hughes Mortuary. And I love serving the people. And that allows me another opportunity to serve at a very unique time in life for many families. And I've been able to meet a lot of people, and I absolutely love it. I've loved the opportunity that I've had to serve on the St. George City Council. I've been on many boards and commissions and currently serve on many of those where I've learned a lot of things. I want to take that knowledge and go another 4 years. And do I need to stop it? 30 seconds. So I'm asking you for your vote. One of the things that I've always said before and say now, I'm always accessible. I will always take your phone call. I may not always agree with you, but I'm always going to take your input and I'm going to put it to work. So thank you. August 11th, I appreciate your vote.
Jimmy, I think I'll buy my first casket from you. Last me a lifetime. All right, thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for coming out. My name's Kendall Clements, and just to give a background on who I am and where I come from, I started life out in Idaho, married my wife up there, and together we looked at each other and said, it's too cold. We moved to Salt Lake, it was still too cold. We moved to Phoenix, it was too hot. Came back to St. George at 106. We feel comfortable at 106. We can live with that as a parameter. But seriously, it took me about 7 years to figure out how to move to St. George. I've enjoyed it. We visited family here often. I've got a lot of family that has been here since the late 60s. And I had to create our own work in order to move here. And so I'm a very pro-business person. I'd like to see strength in industry come to St. George. I love that we have good infrastructure for that in our industrial complexes. I am a supporter of the airport. I currently work in a tourism industry and real estate. I bring people from all over the world to experience St. George. We do a great deal with the Huntsman Senior Games, the marathon, 8 billion soccer tournaments throughout the year. And it's a good thing for our economy. Boy, that was faster than Jimmy's. But here in the community, I'm currently a secretary of the Exchange Club, and Betty mentioned earlier about the All Abilities Park, and it's been a pleasure of mine the last 3 years to be associated with that organization. Earlier this year, we donated $100,000 to that All Abilities Park, which I think is a good thing of private not private enterprises, but community organizations working with cities to create a better environment, not only for our citizens, but those who visit us from all over the world. St. George is a great place to be. It's unique in the world. Its topography, its geography, and its people are unique. This is my first time running. The last time I ran was in 6th grade, and I lost to a kid who promised root beer at the drinking fountain. It was a dirty trick then. It's a dirty trick now. But I do love to serve people. It's my passion. I like to see people succeed both in business and in their personal lives. St. George is a great place to do it. Look forward to your support coming up in the primaries. Thank you.
That's great. I've known him since he was about yay high. So, my name's Craig Hammer. I'm grateful to be here. First, let me say thank you to Betty and to Jimmy, and I know Michelle's here for your service. I came to St. George in 1978 to attend Dixie College when there were 2 lights on the boulevard. So I think I've seen, left for 10 years, came back in 1990. Best decision I'd ever made is married my wife, Marcia, who is a St. George resident, a local. Love St. George. I've been privileged for a while there, for about 8 years. I served on the St. George City Water and Power Board. Got to know the ins and outs of the water and the power side, which is really an interesting deal. I'll always be grateful to those who have come before us, who laid that foundation to make this the great city that it is. It's a wonderful place to live. I've raised my family. I was thinking when you were naming, Jimmy, how old your kids were, I was thinking, how old are mine? 31, 27, 25, and I've got a 22-year-old that's eligible, if anybody knows just a strapping, good young man that lives in St. George. The other ones have had to leave. I work for Washington County School District. Part of my responsibility is physical facilities. I buy the real estate, we build the new buildings. We've had to manage this. We've had to manage growth, which has been an unbelievable task on our part. We live in a world in the school district where when they come, we will build it. We don't build it, then they come. When they come, we build it, so trying to stay ahead of that. I've got a lot of experience with that growth, a lot of experience working with cities in my capacity with not just St. George City, but Washington and Hurricane and Santa Clara and Enterprise. I know those people and I've been involved with them. I think it's a great opportunity to run. I've never done this before. But I'm excited to do it, and I look forward for your support in the primary. Thank you.
I know you're wondering, it's Micheline, but I also respond to hey you. And obviously, if you look up here, there's one big difference that makes me unique. You may have noticed an age thing here. Good for y'all. But it's and that's a big part, I think, of what St. George needs to approach is there's a big part of our demographic that I think isn't being represented. 60% of our 77,000 population is under the age of 45, and they currently don't have any governmental representation. So I think that would be a fantastic thing to address, because as a lot of these guys are saying, they've raised families here, and and I'm planning on raising a family here, and I think that requires addressing a lot of issues. Because as having grown up here, I know how the area is booming. Between the grades of K through 12, I went to 5 different schools because the school lines had to keep being redrawn. So I understand how important it is, and I'm so grateful for the fantastic infrastructure we've had and for the leadership that we have had that's allowed us to grow and develop into the blossoming city that we are today. And I just want to continue to see that, and for St. George to apply the best practices and policies that they possibly can. So I look forward to your questions tonight.
Are you ready? Oh, hey, good evening. My name is Brian Theriot, and Theriot is like patriot, and so you can remember that. But I'm glad that I fit under her statistic under the 45 and under. I just barely fall under that. The second thing I did after I filed for St. George City Council was I released my birth certificate to make sure everybody knew that I was not only a U.S. citizen, but I was actually born here in St. George, Utah. I have family ancestry that came into this good area here. And upon that, I look back and I think of St. George today compared to then. I am so glad that none of the leaders at that time were faced with having to build a city and facing an environmental impact study from the federal government to lay out our city. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's been built up here for us. I'm the oldest of 6 boys. My mother was a school teacher here. She taught at East Elementary. And the one thing she'd always say, raising 6 boys, was we shouldn't have had a house, we should have had a barn. And we had a good time growing up here in St. George here. I graduated from Dixie College. I went on to Weber State University and graduated with a degree in political science and communication. And then from there, instead of going to BYU, where my father went, I chose where my mother went. That was the University of Utah, and earned a graduate degree in public administration. My master's thesis at that time was the annexation of West Wendover and Wendover, Nevada. So if there's ever an annexation, I'm going to be an expert on that for the City Council. I would love your vote, August 11th. And I hope to stay around and visit with you and get to know each and every one of you and answer any and all questions. The one thing I want to leave you with here is I'm not a candidate that's going to speak a lot of rhetoric to you. I want to be a representative, and I leave that with you.
Thank you all. We appreciate you answering that. If for those of you who have written out a question, if you could pass them to the middle, and Larry will come by and pick all of those up. We're going to start going through those. And hopefully for our panel, you have a little something to write with, because the next question is a two-parter, so you may want to just make a little note. And I think this time we'll start with Brian and work back this way. Okay. And if you'll answer your question in just 1 minute. This will be 1 minute, Casey. Okay. In one brief sentence, tell us what is the biggest challenge facing St. George, and in another brief sentence, tell us how you see the city meeting that challenge. Brian.
Here.
Yeah, we're going to start with
So
Brian.
Okay. The biggest challenge that we're always going to continue to face is we're not Detroit. We're actually St. George, Utah, where people actually want to come and live here and grow their families here. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think water will always be one of the top issues when you're living in a desert. And with that, I'm always going to look to diversify our water resources. Number 2, safety. 3 years ago, two streets from where I live, there was a double homicide. Just the other day, on the other side of Dixie High School where I live, there was another shooting. Public safety is going to be another high priority value for me living here in St. George.
I'll respond. Okay, we are growing. I think almost all of us have addressed that, and I know a big concern about those who live here and want to continue living here is not losing what makes us special, and that's the small town feel, even though we're a city. And I've heard that across all demographic and age groups. I think the best thing that we can do is communicate, both not only with each other, but between City Hall and the citizens, and to increase that communication so that we have a great idea of not only do we want in every area of the city, but also so that the citizens can have a better understanding of City Hall's plan of how to manage this new challenge.
15. She's done.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge and all that comes with it is in the next several years is the same thing we're dealing with the school district, is growth and trying to stay ahead of that curve, and how we manage that growth as it relates to water and power and public safety and all that comes with that growth. I think it's just how the city needs to handle that. And I think the city council needs to have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. What do we want to look like? What are we going to be? Hopefully in 5 or 10 years we'll be able to look back and say, people will say to us, thank you. Like we've said, and I've said personally, thank you to those that came before us that created the environment that we have here now and the quality of life that we have now. That's why we're here. That's why we want to live here, and I want to be a part of that.
Well, I think the theme is going to be growth. I moved here during the Great Recession. That's what brought me to St. George. And as I look back on that, you look at the economy of St. George, it's built on real estate and construction, and that's a concern that I see, that it's a single 1 to 2 type of industry community. We need to expand that and grow various industries that we have a diversified economy, because growth is going to come, but so will economic cycles, and I think there's a good balance there. I also think maintaining our culture. I was meeting with a gal that's relocating here the other day, and she thought St. George is one of the greatest places, and it is. I confirmed that with her. But one of the concerns with growth is how do you maintain that small town feel, even though we are no longer a small town? It's a challenge, and I'm grateful for the city that has done a job up to this point that has been commendable. Thank you.
So as not to sound like a parrot, I'm going to say this differently. Population increase. The Mayor MacArthur used to always say there are two kinds of people, three kinds of people: those who live here, those who will live here, and those who want to live here. So that's the challenge we're always going to have. I think it's very important to note that as a city, prior councils and mayors have and city staff have come up with a master plan with master planning and zoning. Those are taken with public input, and as a community, you're always welcome and encouraged. And I hope you'll take the advantage of coming in and making comments, so we have a good plan moving forward, so that we do maintain what also Mayor MacArthur called the Dixie spirit, which is what we have been given here by our predecessors.
I hope we all know what the problems are. These gentlemen and the lady to my right have mentioned it. Population growth is probably the biggest one, but there's another one that I believe needs to be looked at more carefully, and that's the management of the city. A good example of what I consider a problem is code enforcement. Has been put on hold by this city because of a lawsuit, and something needs to be done better than that. We can do that better. I was a justice court judge in Salt Lake County. I was the director of building and zoning enforcement there. I'm a little bit familiar with code enforcement, and I think the management aspect of it needs to be looked at very carefully. Thank you.
I think this is a question very hard to answer in 1 minute. One of the things I want to do in my campaign is to release issue papers at stgeorge.com. I'm going to be releasing those, St. George spelled out. I'm going to be releasing issue papers over the coming weeks about topics, and one of the topics that I'm concerned about, like everyone else, is how we manage the growth. Our city is blessed with a lot of growth, but that can be a curse if we mismanage it. And one of my main focuses for the city council is to have the city council be much more active and idea-driven council to stay ahead of that. Last year, my wife and I were, our business being in the center of downtown, we're at the epicenter of some of this growth and some of the focus for development. We believe that the development being considered by the city is not going to be good for the city. And a lot of those conversations about that development aren't as public and aren't as shared with the public, and there's not as much conversation as we all deserve as we decide what we're going to do with our downtown. So that will be one of my focuses. Thank you.
Well, at this point, when you're at this end of the table, you could just say amen to all of them. But I will focus just briefly on the fact that we have growth and that we are bringing a very diverse population to our city. Fabulous people are moving from all over the country, west coast and east coast, and other places as well. And I think it's a challenge to bring us all together. On a couple of issues, I have received email on my phone from just about an equal number of people totally opposing something. And I think that speaks to the fact that we need to have wonderful activities where we come together, very transparent government, a lot of communication between us so that we can understand where other people are coming from and work together.
Well, certainly the biggest challenge the city is facing is no doubt, without question, growth. And that includes water, education, air quality, infrastructure. But I'd like to really focus on the first one being water. Without water, we have no growth. I'm here to tell you tonight that I don't believe that we need the Lake Powell pipeline. I think working with our developers in the city, within the council, on conservation efforts, having the builders build with very low water landscaping, that we can actually preserve and have water for this growth that we're experiencing.
Thank you. Just received, thank you, audience, for bringing in a number of questions, and we'll definitely work on those and try to get those involved. One question, the very next one on our list, has to do with code enforcement. So, Lane, thank you for bringing that up. The question is, Chapter 12, Article A of the City Code gives code enforcement officers explicit permission to enter upon any property or premises without needing a warrant or permission from the property owners. Do you see a problem with this? If so, please explain exactly what you believe the problem to be, and in a more general sense, do you feel the city has taken code enforcement too far? If so, what do you plan on doing about it? A follow-up question that I want to do that, so code enforcement and the problems there, that seems to be a hot issue, and it reminds me of a couple years ago when we have an animal control problem. That was a really hot issue then, and I think what the mayor did, and Todd Jones is here. Todd, raise your hand.
Todd just left.
Oh, Todd just left. The mayor decided to get the public involved, and he chose Todd Jones and a number of individual people as citizens to research the problem and come up with some ideas. And the problem is now solved. Everyone is happy about how that's done. So the question that I had, code enforcement is controlled by the city without citizen input. What would you be willing to do to ensure the citizens are heard in the issue of code enforcement and other issues? For example, the Tuka citizens, we talked about that. So code enforcement and your solution on that. And rather than go down the line, what's the audience? You feel like we just ought to raise a hand and give them 2 minutes? Or
Let's start in the middle this time.
Start in the middle? All right. Jimmy, why don't you start that?
Just because, really quickly, and I'll be quick, and then I can shut up and anybody can talk all they want.
And you have a solution, right?
The first question, that is absolutely correct. That was brought up to me when I first campaigned, that Article 12. It's absolutely correct. Archie Iverson, if anybody know Archie Iverson, brought that to my attention, and it was odd. There's not been anyone that I have talked to that does not think that was odd. I actually have email. Right now, we've been working, one of the things that I've been tasked to do is...
By the way, that's a 2-minute question. I already started. Okay, thank you.
So I'll talk fast, just so everybody else is aware. We have changed the wording on that. A lot of these codes are taken from other cities, and there's not, a lot of them just get shoved in there. So this wording basically does say code enforcement can enter any property. Okay, so we're changing the wording. I just got some more wording back from Paula Houston, the Assistant City Attorney, and that will be coming before the council to change. Yes, it is true. We have been on hold on a lot of our code enforcement reform because of the lawsuit. The attorneys hammered on us, and had to be a responsible representative of you, the public, and to not put us out there in some sort of a limbo in a legal situation. And Larry could understand this. We were asked and told and counseled not to make any major changes until this went through the court system. It hasn't made it all the way through, but we've gone far enough that as a council we've said, well, we're willing to, at this point, in the interest of the public, make those changes. We think we've gone far enough that we won't be putting our suit or our position as a city in jeopardy. Now let me be very clear. Even if we were wrong as a city council person, we're still bound to be able to keep those things that are closed door, or like attorney-client privilege almost, that way. So as far as anything secretive going on that's been alluded to, I was told that before I was elected to the city council. Simply is not true. Simply is not true. There is no sinister plot behind the scenes that I am aware of, unless they're leaving me out of it as well. So hopefully that answers. I'm happy to clarify any of that.
Okay. Let's have Mr. Clements go that way, and then we start with. Then come back this way, please.
Well, thank you very much.
2 minutes.
Right. In my industry, I actually faced the threat of city code enforcement at one point, where I was threatened that my records would be seized and I'd be hauled off to jail if I didn't comply. And so I'm very sensitive to this issue, and I actually, to Jimmy's credit, I actually reached out to Jimmy after he was elected, and I'm grateful for his activity and involvement on the city council. I think he's brought some good balance to that. But in my own website, where I've got some of the issues that are important to me out there, one of them is specifically the issue about city code enforcement. My concern is that cities are becoming more and more like grand, oversized, overzealous homeowners associations where they're outside of control of the population. I think citizens should be allowed to put themselves in a homeowners association by free will and choice, not the role of the city. So my thought, thank you very much. So my thought on that is the city should be less involved, but there's a fine balance there, and I'm grateful for the city in taking the approach that they're at this point and bringing some balance to that. But that balance needs to come in a way of minimizing what code enforcement should look like. I look at health and safety are big keys, not the size of the weed in your yard or other things. We can spend all night on that topic. But I think things are going in the right direction, and I'd like to put my hand to the plow on that aspect as a council member.
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Code enforcement, I think we all want to live in a great community, and we all want to do that. I just don't think we want people walking in our yards and having a free-for-all and going in our backyards and look. I totally disagree with that. I commend Councilman Hughes for taking those steps to change that. I'm currently a president of an HOA, and we govern our own HOA, and we've had code enforcement contact us about lots that have had weeds overgrown, but they were very professional with us. I really couldn't complain about my experience, personally my experience with them. They've been very good with us, and just it was more of a gentle reminder that some neighbors felt like that the weeds needed to be taken down, and we talked to people as an HOA, and we completed those tasks. I'm for limited government, but I'm also, as Kendall said, also, you know, there's that fine line. We want to live in a good community, and I think all of us want to live in a beautiful community too. But I think we can rally together and work these things out. We can listen to the public as a council and achieve those kind of things that we need. Nobody wants to be told you get this out of your yard or that out of your yard, and what is ugly to one person may not be ugly to another person, but ultimately somebody has to make that decision. But like I said, I appreciate what the council's done. As a school district, we run into policies that are ancient all the time about things, the way things were done before, and I appreciate them stepping up as we have stepped up and changed those kind of policies. So thank you.
Shirley.
Obviously, it's a violation of rights, but I think the intent of allowing people to just be in your yard, nobody likes that. But the intent for code enforcement is a lot like the intent for the police department. They're there as an equalizer and to try to keep people safe. Obviously, my biggest issue is how often we adapt things as a city from other people's, and they're like, oh, well, other cities do this, so we adapted it, which in this case was the problem. Which means, in my account, that somebody didn't do enough research into what it actually meant before it was applied. Which I think we deserve a city council that is willing to do the time and the research. I mean, obviously, this is a civil service position that we're here to. I mean, the intent is that we're here to serve you, and for you to be able to feel comfortable to contact us. And which is some of what I've seen as I've read on like St. George News and the Spectrum with comments about this very issue, about the code enforcement issue, is people have strong feelings about it and they want to communicate. And I think the best thing we can do is to increase that communication with, for instance, we can have community councils. If you look at Salt Lake, they have those, which allows more communication, lines of communication between citizens and City Hall.
I'm going to lead off by saying striking a balance. I lived in the Philippines for 2 years where there was lack of no code enforcement. So I've seen the extremes there. Nor do I want to live in a society where government runs anything and everything that we do every day. And I also want to look at, as I listen to this here, not only code enforcement, but I'm going to be looking at the U.S. Constitution and our Bill of Rights that we as citizens have in applying laws and ordinances that govern our lives. I also want to look at not only code enforcement, but maybe there's other ordinances that are on the current books at the council that maybe need to be sunsetted, finding a balance with us. So that would be something that I also want to look at as well.
Let's go to Mark. No, Mark, and then Betty. And are you ready?
Well, code enforcement here in St. George is definitely a hot topic. I'm definitely about all of our constitutional rights as citizens, but entering the properties without a warrant or some sort of warning, some sort of advance notice, I don't think is right. I think the code definitely needs to be amended, maybe needs to be rewritten. I'm glad to hear Councilman Hughes saying that those things are currently in the works. How the citizens perceive our city, I think, is very important. A lot of them, I think, were not in the know or felt that they didn't really know what was going on with the code enforcement. So I think a lot of this could be resolved with a little bit more transparency, a little bit more communication, as was alluded. Letting the citizens know what's going on. We're trying to fix this. Things are changing for the better, and really getting everybody all on board and knowing what's going on with the code enforcement.
I am a staunch believer in private property rights and in keeping the Constitution most in our minds, both the national Constitution and our state Constitution. I also believe that one of the functions and one of the main functions of a city council and all of its members is to maintain the health and safety of our citizens. We have a lot of things going on, and as we are actually a very new council right now as we are constituted. There are 4 of us that are fairly new. A lot of our ordinances and guidelines have been done previously by other councils, and we have informed our attorney and the whole attorney team that we would like them to go through all of our regulations and codes and update them. So we are presently doing that as a council because we want to make sure that we do not infringe on people's rights. We have informed our attorney, and he was already doing this, by the way, but we need to be sensitive to people. We don't want a snowbird who has invested in a home here in St. George to be harassed for something that they're not even here to deal with. And we want our city to be able to work with every individual homeowner and condominium owner to solve problems, especially when the whole neighborhood feels that they're a problem. It's a matter of getting along and working to see that our problems are solved. All of them can be solved, but we must treat each other in a very respectful and humane way.
Well, I haven't heard one person really defending the old code enforcement rules and how they were implemented. My wife and I, soon after we moved into a new home, had a code enforcement officer come and take a picture of a debris pile that was there before we got there. I was a little shocked that they were on the property and sending me the letter. We took care of it, and we were happy to do so. But clearly it was a wrong way for the city to be run. The question I have then is, if it's the wrong way for the city to be run, why is the code not changed? If I was on the city council, it would be changed immediately. We wouldn't do any other form of business until we got it taken care of. The other question I have is, if the city did something wrong, then why are we defending ourselves so vigorously in court? The city should admit that it did something wrong. My wife and I, in our business, we have customers all day long. We cut stuff coming and stuff going, deliveries. We make mistakes. We're human. And what I've learned through business is the first thing you need to do is admit when you do something wrong. Tell people you want to take care of it. Tell people you want to make them happy. And I think if the city were to approach the loss would be over. We'd be freed up to take care of people that felt like they were abused in the process. And I think that maybe in the end it would cost the city less money, and we'd be able to move on and make this a non-issue.
I didn't bring this up in my prior comment because I think it should be enforced more than it is. I think it should be enforced less. I'm privy to a meeting where a high-level code enforcement administrator in St. George told me specifically that the code is where they started. The code is where they started, not where they ended, but where they started. Now, I know that for a fact. When I was the director of Building and Zoning Enforcement Department in Salt Lake County, I set up an appeals board, which was authorized in the Uniform Building Code, so that if people had an appeal or disagreed with something the inspectors did in the zoning and building department, they had a place to appeal it. We don't have this here. As a matter of fact, when they were thinking about creating an administrative law judge or replacing the old administrative law judge, the job description that was handed out had that person responsible to the city attorney, which is an absolute conflict of interest. Absolute conflict of interest. We need people in there that have had experience in dealing with these kind of problems to can't not just sit back and say, well, we're working on that. That's all I have to say about that.
You want me to answer any of those, or we just assume the truth? No. We'll go to the next question.
And if there's time at the end, we'll let you
My flyer out there has my cell phone, my email, my website. I would love to talk to people.
Okay,
My flyer has the same thing, and I want to talk to you.
okay.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
A couple of the questions from the audience have to do with downtown development. Another one has to do with an area that they feel is underserved, science, technology, engineering for young people, K to 12. And that fits under the umbrella of the next question.
And it's a 2-minute.
And it's a 2-minute answer. How do you see the proper role of local government? What services should the city provide, and at what cost? And as Nick and I were formulating this question, we were thinking in terms of 3 categories. What's vital, what's important, and what's nice to have?
Can you,
we'll start with
can you
Mark.
repeat the question?
Okay.
I'm a slow rider. I was educated
Sure.
in Idaho.
How do you see, my husband was too, and he wasn't slow. So.
It's a man thing.
How do you see the proper role of government? What services should the city provide, and at what cost? And then we kind of came up with 3 categories. What is vital? What is important? What is nice to have? And we'll start with Mark.
That's quite a question, Mary. The proper role of local government. Well, I think we're blessed that, as it's been mentioned quite a few times, we have a great foundation already laid in the city. I think our recreation and arts, local Parks and Rec department do a fabulous job. What's vital, what's important, and what's nice to have? Well, I'm definitely not here to say that we need to increase any of the spending here in the city. I think that we have great programs currently going on. In order to clarify what is actually vital, important, and nice to have, I think would take longer than a 2-minute question. But I feel that what we have right now is a great foundation that we can build upon.
It's interesting how oftentimes our citizens do not understand the political subdivisions of government, how they get confused and they go to a congressional office to find help with the child abuse situation, which is a state issue, which you would go to your governor for that. Or they come to the city for something that needs to be taken care of by Congress. And I think that oftentimes we apply the congressional desires to a city council. A city needs to provide roads for their citizens to get around. They need to make sure that they have adequate and well-trained police force to protect them and their rights and other people. And they need to provide for fire service. And I believe those are some of the 3 essentials. Now, our world has grown. We provide Switch Point for our homeless. We provide arts activities to keep us whole and to keep us human and to make us happy and provide a higher quality of life. We provide many services, recreation, to give our youth something to do, and actually here to give our seniors something to do, because we more requests from them for our pickleball courts than anything else. But people are coming here because we're providing so many things, and we have a unique way of funding them. We have investments the city has made over the years where we're able to sell a piece of property to do the things that we do. People are very generous and they donate, and we're able to accomplish more things than any of the cities around. And I think that if we can, we must do the important things first and then expand out from there and provide a very high quality of life. Sorry.
Again, a very tough question for 2 minutes. Proper role of government. What's the proper role of government in providing services? I think that the answer to that question really needs to come from the people of St. George. I think one of the ways that we find out what services we want to do and in what way we do that is to be really open and have a lot of more conversations about what we all want for our city. In general, however, I think it's my point of view that government is not going to be as efficient at providing certain services as the private sector. And in Minneapolis, I had, when I was growing up, there was a concession stand near Lake Calhoun that lost the city $100,000 a year, and for 20 years. They decided to lease out the concession stand, and the terms of the lease was that the leaseholder had to split the profits with them. The first summer that concession stand reopened, the city got a check for $300,000 for their half of the profits. So because those people had a mortgage to pay, they got up in the morning and they made sure that concession stand was going to meet the needs of the people that were visiting that facility. So in general, what I have in the back and on my website, stgeorge.com, spell out Saint, the 10 things I want to accomplish as city council member. Number 6 is I want to explore ways to privatize many of the city activities that the city of St. George currently does. The top of my list would be one of the golf courses. So I want to have city meetings, I want to dig in, and let's find what we can do to follow that concession stand model and hand some of these activities over to the private sector and see if they can't be more responsive to the people and do things more efficiently and more cost effectively. Thank you.
As Betty mentioned, the budget for the city is $57.2 million. More cops, cars, parks proposed in St. George budget. St. George signs on to RAP tax agreement. Efforts to revitalize city center progressing. And this is the one that blew my mind. County city sue St. George Museum. Hello? We seem to be behind the curve. The responsibility of the city is like the police, to protect and serve our needs, not wait until problems come up, not wait to do things after the fact. That's what I think the city ought to be doing. Public safety needs growing with the city. These are all valid points, but it needs to be managed better. Now, these people are all good people. They're not bad people, but someone needs to be in there with some experience in management. Somebody that's not just been something, but has done something, can manage this type of public entity. Not micromanagement, but have some oversight and suggest some alternatives to get caught up. Thank you.
Beautiful. Really not a hard question to answer. We're a political subdivision of the state. There's obviously state and federal laws that trump us, and we can only go so far. However, as a city council, as a city government, we are what we like to say where the rubber hits the pavement. So right comes to mind is roads, public safety, police and fire protection. Those are the crucial things. Obviously sewer, water, power. Besides the general budget, we have enterprise funds and separate companies like the Power and Water Department that are managed as separate funds and separate entities. Those are all important parts of a city. Probably after that, the rest starts to be fluff. However, I would say, the devil's in the details. If you were to advertise that we were going to cut all parks, all arts budget, everything like that out, you would have a room larger than this filled with people screaming mad. So those things are the nice things. That was the question. They are nice. There are things we could do without, I assume, but there are things as a society we have decided enhance our quality of life. But I'm all for saving money, and the other question was, at what cost? The very least cost possible. I challenge you to compare your utility rates, not by me, but by previous councils and city manager. We've been a pretty well-managed city, as well as the water and the power department. Our rates are very competitive and very, very good if you compare. Other than that, again, there's those basic services, and there's a lot of fluff. I won't bother to try to answer all the things that are said, but there's a lot of things that are being said that are kind of innuendo and kind of out there. I'm happy to answer those questions after, because there's just not enough time here to answer them all.
I love sitting next to Jimmy because he has good answers. I'm going to kind of continue on with that because I believe both him and how Betty has answered it, that those vital services of police and fire are critical. But there are those nice-to-have functions that Jimmy has alluded to, parks, recreation, that if we don't have those, then our community doesn't have the charm about it. In business, you call those lost leaders sometimes. They may not always produce a dollar for dollar, a dollar in, a dollar out, but they create benefit and value in other areas. My industry would not succeed if we didn't have golf courses and parks and trails that draw people into our area, and that feeds our restaurants, it feeds our grocery stores, it feeds our recreation revenues, the tourism dollars. It also attracts other industries. We talked about, I think the word tech was out there for young people and so forth. I would love to see more growth in the medical industry and technology into our community. And it's those little ancillary things that may be called fluff, but I think they're a vital fluff. And I think Jimmy's answer was very well placed, for as little as possible. And public input is so critical to that. But if you ever go to a city council meeting, there's 5 people there, and actually there's 7, and 5 are the city council. Mm-hmm. We need more active involvement from our citizenry on that. I'm not saying every Thursday come down, every other Thursday, isn't it, Jimmy? Yeah. Come down and spend your time there, but be more active in our community. At least once a quarter come out and see what's going on and see the work that's being done. Our city is very well managed. It's easy to sit back and complain about we're $57 million because I can't put my hands around it. I got 2 nickels in my pocket. I can't relate to $57 million. But in reality, our city is well managed. Is there improvement? There always is improvement. That's a great role for active city council to be involved in, and it definitely takes active city participants to come through.
Like was said before, it's fun to be on the end of the questions because you can sort of say ditto to a lot of things. I mentioned that I came here in 1978 when there was 2 lights on the boulevard, and I've watched a tremendous amount of growth. And then also my experience with the Water and Power Board. I'll be forever grateful for the Wayne MacArthurs and the Philip Solomons of the world that came before us. And if you look at your power bill, as Jimmy has said, you're paying peanuts compared to what other cities pay. It's an amazing thing what they have done, and those people that have had that great foresight to look out and do that. So what services should the city provide? I feel I tend to fall in line with pretty much the majority that we need to provide that level of security. In 1992, as an employee of Washington County School District, we added school resource officers to the schools, and I will never forget the fight we had over, the schools are so bad, we've got to have officers in the schools. Well, it's an interesting thing here all these years later that we've humanized the PD. We don't have gangs that come out of the schools. We don't have stuff like that because the PD has been phenomenal. We did a joint effort, which is a great thing. Started with the grant. We have an officer in all the schools, and they've humanized them. We need to provide that public service and continue to do those kind of things. Same with the water. I'll disagree. I think there may be a need for the pipeline. I've spent a lot of time as a school district with Ron Thompson and looking at the growth patterns and looking where we're going here. And if we believe in people having property rights and be able to develop their property, all of a sudden we're short on water. We don't capitalize on the resources that we have available. Do we say, sorry, you're done? We shut it down? Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Well, it's not so much saying ditto as addressing a couple things that I heard. Like for instance, it's about what the citizens want, and from what I've heard from the citizens, we don't want to pay for golf courses. Why why is that what our taxes is going to? And not only that, it's like, yeah, the government should, you know, it takes care of roads and it takes care of all these other things, and our roads are always being torn up, and it's because of development. But I also have to wonder how much is because there wasn't enough long-term planning, like was mentioned before, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan, so that we can lay the foundation for the expected growth. So that way because it's not for the cheapest amount possible. You pay, you know, you get what you pay for. It's about paying the right amount for the best quality for our citizens, because that's what we all deserve, is the best quality, which is, I think, you know, as Betty said, a lot of us aren't aware of what's available or where to get the information. And I think that's a lack of some transparency, but also because have anybody been on the City Hall website lately? It's not very user-friendly. It's not searchable for specific documents. It's hard to find a lot of the information that you're looking for. And I think that, you know, having someone specifically address that would be fantastic, because everybody does want to get involved, which is why I keep addressing community collaboration in all of my information, because we need to have more connection and we need to have more communication, and that would allow it and make sure that every geographic location is represented. Because yeah, there are city council meetings twice a month, but who's ever worked more than one job? Because I've worked pretty much 3 jobs for the last 5 years, and I know that we're all hardworking, dig in and get it done yourself type of people. Thank you.
I don't know what kind of cleanup I get to do here. Vital, absolutely vital. Well, when you look at the role of government, not only local government, you have state government, federal government, political subdivisions, school districts. It's just kind of intertwines all throughout our lives here. But I would say one of the vital roles is public safety, transportation. We have to move through and about. You know, it'd be nice to get to the hospital if you really needed it. Our economy. Something important, I think it's very important to bring before this body here tonight, this evening, is the St. George BLM field officer manager. We're going to have a new field manager here. I think it's absolutely important that St. George City have somebody on the council who could sit down with a new manager to educate them on St. George City. They wield a lot of power throughout this area here. And then just last, nice to have, what I put on was 2 years ago, it would have been nice to have at least a minimum of 1 snowplow in the city when we had the storm. But that's just on my nice to have. At a minimum, at least an agreement with Cedar City to come down and help us out, to clear out this road.
I drove to Cedar City, didn't mind.
Thank you. We apologize for the heat in here. We've got the air conditioning turned down as low as possible. That's why I don't wear a tie in the summer. Let's start back with you, Brian. The next question. This is kind of interesting. That came up this last week. I called to talk with someone. They said, well, the Internal Revenue Service is keeping our people in the finance department so busy. And I'm thinking, why in the heck is the IRS involved in the city of St. George? Shouldn't that be at the state level and not? So I called John Dougal, the state auditor, said, what is going on? And he said, well, they're probably having to do with some federal funding. And so that's another question, is the next question. This is 30 seconds, if you would. Generally, whoever provides the money controls the situation. In light of this, should the city be accepting federal funds? And if so, in what situation? I'm going to start with that and come down. 30 seconds.
Yes, the city should accept federal funds. If I'm a federal taxpayer, I'm going to want to make sure that my federal dollars come back into my city. We had a disaster here in 2005 with the flood. I was working with Senator Bennett. It was an actual earmark. I know it's terrible to say, of $85 million through the National Resource Conservation Service that come through and allowed us to armor the Santa Clara River so that it could help mitigate these floods when they come through our area.
30 seconds, next.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand the hesitation because, you know, especially in an area like this, we're all about small government and limited governmental interaction. But it does allow us to take the best care of our citizens, and I lived through that flood. That was intense. So, I mean, it does. It's all about managing the funds and having people who have the best interests of the citizens in mind, because that's the thing, is while it comes from them, and I'm sure that they get a say depending on what it is, we get to decide whether or not to take those funds, and the people that you elect are the ones that determine how to distribute it, and will hopefully do so in a way that prohibits the federal government having a lot of control over our decisions in our community.
I absolutely agree that we need to accept those federal funds. Like I said, I work with the school district. Your taxes would go up dramatically if we didn't have federal funds. Now, we know usually a lot of times going into these programs what we have to do, what we can do, and what we can do. Sometimes we're lucky enough we can choose what programs we want to participate in and which ones we don't, because sometimes we don't want to be held hostage. As I mentioned, that resource officer program, that was a federal grant we did back in '92, and it turned out to be a wonderful thing.
I think the theme is that we should accept federal funds. I'm going to just put a little asterisk out there and relate it back to my own personal life. If you've ever been in debt, it sucks. And I don't ever want to be in that position again, because I want to have my own sense of independence. I think the more independent we can be, the better off we are going to be. But there are times in situations where federal funds are necessary out there, and we are tax-paying citizens, and we should have access to those, but I'd like to have a limited dependency upon the distribution of government dictation on that.
Has anybody here ever ridden the bus here in St. George? Okay, there would be no bus without federal funding. As long as I'm paying in, we need to take what's coming back to us. Now, I'm okay to look at the fact that maybe we don't need to do that once we as a state and a county control all of the land in our state and county. Then maybe we can look at that. Right now, without PILT, which some of you may be familiar with, that's payment in lieu of taxes. That's how the federal government compensates us for all the land that they own that we don't get property tax on. It'd be very difficult for us to survive without that money. So, yes, I'm not going to refuse federal funds. Yes, I'm in favor of taking them as long as we're paying in.
There is no free lunch. Somebody has to pay for it. And I think we should take federal funds, but we should evaluate what it's going to cost us, what we have to do for it, and what the triggers are that are going to put us in a position that we may not want to be. I'm an efficiency person, and it needs to be managed efficiently, and most importantly, transparently.
Obviously, I think it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. I think you need to look into whether or not what the strings that are attached. I mentioned in my introduction that my family ran a nonprofit music school that was quite large. Though we were a nonprofit, we didn't take any donations. As the executive director, my fear was that we would become dependent upon those donations. We funded everything through the fees charged to people that were coming to the nonprofit for music lessons. And therefore, I needed to, as the executive director, make sure that we were efficient and we were independent. And if we were dependent on a certain percentage of donations, what happens if there's a downturn and those donations go away? Our school becomes at risk. So I think one of the other things you have to look at as a city is what happens if the city then becomes dependent upon those funds, and whether or not we want to invest into a program that would end up being in trouble if those funds ever didn't come.
I believe that we should pay as we go, and we should be very fiscally responsible with our money. But when we go to build a large building or to deal with a disaster, it's often more money than you can just pull out of a hat. And matching money from the federal government is helpful in doing that. For instance, our airport. we, I believe, just paid the last bond payment on our airport transaction, and we own the old, we're calling it the Ridgetop now, that property where we can sell it and do good things for the city, and our airport is paid for. I think that's being fiscally responsible, providing services for the people and leveraging the money that we can, well, there obviously is federal money involved in that transaction from the FFA.
There's definitely certain instances, emergency situations where federal funding, federal money, federal dollars is definitely needed and welcomed. But I think we need a city council and a mayor that will stand up against federal overreach and not accept funds when they're not needed. You know, who's going to say to the regulation quoting bureaucrats and the armed federal agents, not in my city? So that it is on a case-by-case basis, as was mentioned. But I think with our well-managed city that we have currently, there's a lot of cases where the federal dollars are not needed and do not need to be accepted.
Okay, this next question, we'll give you each 1 minute to answer. And this was actually sent to us via email from someone who wasn't able to be here tonight. And this is his question. How do you ensure high-quality public services, including animal shelter, education, police, roads, and infrastructure, etc., in the context of a growing community? And we'll give you each 1 minute. Brian, we'll start at your end, and we'll take it down this way.
Real fast. Could you repeat that one more time?
Okay. How do you ensure high-quality public services, including animal shelter, education, police, roads, and infrastructure, etc., in the context of a growing community? And it's a one minute answer.
I started last time. Don't you want to start down there?
Sure.
I did with the
Okay,
first-
Mark,
Let's start.
go ahead, Mark.
Just started, okay. I was gonna get another tough 1 minute answer. The budget needs to be looked into. Of course, there's gonna be growth in all those different areas, whether it be the animal shelter, roads, infrastructure, all the other things that Mary had mentioned. How we ensure a high quality in each of those areas is to look at where we're at now and in our growth projections and population projections, how we can manage that growth in each of those areas. The high quality, I think we have a fairly high quality right now. Keep doing what we're doing and then look at how we can improve upon each of those individually.
Okay, how we provide services for our community, especially when it's growing, is through our sales tax. Our property tax goes to our education. We have sales tax. The interesting thing about St. George that I don't think our citizens understand, so I'm telling you right now, is that of every dollar of sales tax that is collected, the state takes a huge chunk that we don't see anything really of, and the county takes their share. And we're left with about 20%, and we're providing all of the services and the amenities that we do with a very small amount of money, and it's well managed and leveraged money where we, like I say, we can sell things to do things. Also, our donations and community involvement. There's no other community like this. The Exchange Club brought a $100,000 check to give us for the All Abilities Park. And the Rotary Club, I think it was $10,000. They just keep coming in from wonderful people who donate and want their city to be the very best. And that's how we provide those services for a fast-growing community.
So I guess the question is, I guess the core of the question is how do we ensure high quality services? And I think the answer needs to be oversight. I think my wife and I own Urban Renewal in downtown, and we're at the store every day. And we're at the store every day because the store runs better when we're there. And I think the city council needs to be, I mentioned before, my 10 action items that if I become city council member, it's on my website, stgeorge.com, spelled out Saint, it's out in the hall. But number one is to work with my fellow council members to become a more active and idea-driven body. And what I mean by that is to really get involved and really make sure that we have the oversight for what the city is doing. We're spending our money well, and we're providing a service that's really the highest quality possible to the community. Thank you.
The money for the city to operate on comes from taxes and federal grants and other. Now, I was very impressed with the Exchange Club's donation. I thought it was $200,000, but $100,000 is still a lot of money. We need to be involved in those kind of charitable operations. We need to make sure the money is spent efficiently and with transparency. And I'm repeating that several times, but I think we can all understand something if we know how it was done, how the decision was made, and so forth. And transparency is the only way to do that. And make sure that there are people on the council that have the experience and understanding to be able to have some oversight to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
The way to ensure high-quality service with a growing population is good management, forward thinking. One of the things that we've done and the city manager has done and we all agree to is when there are certain things that are ongoing expenses that we budget for with money that we know is ongoing money, ongoing revenue. When we do a one-time project like a park or something like that, we insist, and the city manager insists, that we spend one-time money. We can't plan on having that money again. So when we have ongoing expenses, we budget for that out of what our available money is, which has been alluded to, which is property tax. 12% is the actual number that St. George City gets out of your property tax if you're a St. George City resident. Figure that out, how much that is, and what you get for that in the form of police, fire protection, roads, all that other good stuff. So take a look at that. That's how you do it, good management.
You took the words out of my mouth, Jimmy. The role of the city government, I've been watching this chip sealing process go along, and I have yet to see Betty out there with those rubber boots on spreading the tar, or Jimmy tossing the rocks yet. It does come by good management. If you go to my website, whoiskendall.com, I have this answer specifically stated out there. In the next 4 years, our city management is going to change, most likely. Our city manager will most likely retire. I think the key and critical role of the city council is making good hiring decisions at that level and other key roles in the city to provide those services. And Jimmy's right on the target there. What do you get for 12 cents out of every dollar collected? It is a challenge out there, and it does come through good hiring practices. I think one of the roles that we need to look at is making sure we're not bound by the golden parachute in those hiring decisions. If somebody in our city management team isn't performing, we need to have the ability to change that person.
I tend to agree with what is said, and I think it's pretty simple. You've got to hire the right people to do the right job, and I think the city's done an outstanding job of several people that they've hired. To tag on Kendall's comment here about if we have to replace those people, during my tenure on the Water and Power Board, I watched several people get replaced who were not effective, and there was no questions asked. It was pretty simple because we had good management at the top. And I think they've always had good management at the top, but again, it comes back to you've got to spend the time, you've got to hire the right people to do the right job and follow through. Without a doubt, it's no different than any other organization.
Rather than top down, what about bottom up? Every single police officer, all of these people, the ones that really interact with the public, training. It's all about them being trained and knowing how to handle the situations as they interact with us, because they're the ones that we interact with the most. And that goes back to community collaboration. I don't know if you know, but our police department works with Dixie University in their criminal forensics lab. And they have access to all of that wonderful technology to take care of our citizens that the university was able to get to train their students. And that's another thing that I think that will allow these services to be at their best peak. Let's find a way to keep our educated people in St. George, which a lot of them can't afford to do at this point. We have an overeducated, underemployed population. And for instance, I mean, we're so lucky to have women like Erin O'Brien, who's creating all sorts of organizations to educate our youth and to create science and technology interests and to improve things.
I just want to give you an example. A couple of years ago, when I was driving on the road on 700 South and Main Street, I saw somebody had spilled over their bucket of bolts and screws and everything else in the road, and I just got on my phone and I called St. George City and I told them about it, and they took care of it. I didn't have to go call my city councilman to take care of that for me. It was very nice and refreshing to see that. So I know that there are a lot of high quality services and employees within St. George City that are doing the best that they can to make sure that we have a great and wonderful city here. I also want to thank not only management but leadership. Where are we going as a city? And there's going to be some big, tough, major decisions that are going to be coming down the pike for us here.
Thank you. We will have one more question, then we'll wrap it up. And I've got about 5 questions here that have come from the audience I'd like to talk about, but we just don't have time to fill them all. So what I'd like to do is afterwards, please go out into the foyer, and if you have questions directly for the candidates, ask those questions. If you'll stick around for about a half hour, we'd appreciate it. The county commissioners have been very generous in allowing us to use this facility, and we want to thank them for allowing us to do that. Ms. Shirley, well, there's one question I wanted to ask, and I'm not really sure. Don't respond on it, but it was a very interesting question. It says, because of the growth of the St. George $80,000, would you consider providing voting districts for the city council voting districts? Don't answer that right now, but that's something that you can be thinking about. The one question that has come up is regarding, Lane talked about the budget of $57 million, and $39 million of that is in personnel services. That's about 68% of the budget of the general fund goes into employees. However, some people have mentioned to me that they feel the city operates behind closed doors or locked doors. When you call a department, you usually get a voice box. If a business is treated its customers that way, they would soon go out of business. What can be done to make the city more user-friendly? And Micheline, you mentioned that about the website, to update that or something. So the question is, what can be done in the city to make the city more friendly or citizen-friendly? Start with Brian. 1 minute, please, and then we'll have ending comments starting with Mark.
Are we answering both of those?
No.
Okay.
So the question is, what can be done to make the city, the voting district is something, it's not going to happen right away, but in larger cities that's happening. That's an idea that was really good, I thought. But then this one is, what can be done to make the city more user-friendly, or rather citizen-friendly? And take 1 minute on that, and then we'll go to the closing. Start with Mark for your closing, and then we'll adjourn out into the foyer. Brian?
Just on the districts real quick, since you did bring it up. I'm
You're
not,
using your minute, Brian.
Yes. I'm not in support of districts. I actually think with the size and population of St. George City, if we really want to get serious and look at checks and balances and separations of powers, I think we're going to have to start looking at a strong mayor form of government. That's just what I see down the future. Communication is always going to be the high priority in getting out and delivering and corresponding with citizens. I'll tell you what, I will say this. If I get the chance to be elected as a member of the city council, constituent services will be my high #1 priority, period.
Thank you.
So I've mentioned it before, community councils based on geographical regions, so you can go to the person in your community. I'm talking really fast because there's a lot that we can do for this. And so you go to that person, then they go to city council can communicate to them, they then can communicate to the community. So it's like we have lives, we have jobs, we have commitments, that'll take that into account. I think we also need to address the user-friendliness of the website because it's not. Like for instance, the calendar that we have of events, you know, there's mommy bloggers that have more updated calendars than the city hall. It's true. But it's also the fact that it's just a technology upgrade in general. There's so many things that you go into City Hall for, where if the website was set up better and it was set up to really serve us, you could just go on there and it would be easier, it would be accessible. And for instance, if you look at Ivan City website, like yes, our meetings are recorded and you can watch them on cable. Who has cable? I don't have cable. Podcasts.
You know, one of the things to make the city more user-friendly, and they actually do a really good job of this, I think. I was a high school principal for 13 years, and I fought tooth and nail not to have an answering machine answer the phone. I would threaten secretaries with their life if it rang more than 2 times, because we are in the public service business. That's us. Parents wanted to talk to us. And I have appreciated the fact that when I've called St. George City, I get a live voice. If I've left an email, if I've left a voicemail, I get a phone call back. I guess I haven't had these horrible experiences that maybe somebody else has had, but if you are having those, one is probably too many. And we need to do that, and it comes back to communication, but it comes back to what we talked about earlier. You know, is it required? Is it frivolous? And maybe it borders on that frivolous world in the website. How many people look at the website? Is that the way we're going to go now? And I'm not saying it is frivolous, but it's one of those decisions you would have to make. But I think it's critical that when you make a phone call, there's nothing I hate worse than calling the bank and getting that machine. Okay? I want to call, I want to talk to a live body, and I want to talk to somebody that can help me and help me now. Thank you.
Well, I've had several interactions with the city, and I've had opportunities where I felt that I haven't been answered, and it generally goes back to that code enforcement. After I've received a threatening letter, they don't want to talk to me. In some aspects, I get that, because at that moment in time, I'm probably not the friendliest person myself. The other side of the spectrum, every time I've gone into the city utility or the city business licensing, 'cause I'm in there almost weekly, I have great experiences with our city services. I've gone and talked to the city attorney. I've had great experiences there. So I think there's different areas that it comes into. I don't know how often we ever stop and thank our city for what they do. We usually contact when we've had a negative experience. But and that's a tough position to put anybody in at that point. But I think communication is important. Does the website need improvement? I spend probably 20% of my time improving my own website and my business because it's a continuous improvement process that we go through. And the city recently has done that, and it looks good.
Very good question. We're dealing with human beings. It's an ongoing process. To think that we haven't tried to do anything is kind of frivolous, but we have to continue to do that. The customer's right. You all are the customer. We talk about this all the time. Things come up. We try to fix them. So it's important to know that. I'm a little dismayed because just this year, we've totally revamped the city's website to make it more user-friendly. I would just be, my pet peeve and my question would be, and you don't have to answer this question, but what city council member, what city staff, or what person have you contacted to say this is not a very user-friendly site? My pet peeve is when I read a national story about an issue in St. George City and not a single person has contacted me on it. And then I go, what am I doing here? I wrote an article not too long ago about, man, call us, hold our feet to the fire. This is good. Elections are good. Bringing these issues up are good. But when you don't ever tell anyone, how can we fix them? And that's really an issue. So I would say get involved.
I haven't had a lot of problems dealing with the city or getting them to call me back. Some people there are very, very efficient, even more efficient than you could even hope for. But if there are people there that aren't, they ought to start answering their phone, calling us back. Because again, their responsibility is to protect and serve.
Well, I don't think customer service happens by accident. My wife and I in our store, we spend a lot of time and effort for the environment that the store presents to people, the merchandise that we stock, and a lot of effort that my wife and I put into the store. And if a salesperson or a staff member is rude to a customer, all that's for nothing. So we spend a great deal of time in training and helping people understand how to work with customers and how to be customer focused and focused on the customer experience. I think that would work the same with the city. And if there is a problem, the city should be working on training and how to address that problem. But also, as we go back to private versus government activities, I think in general, private company is going to be more responsive to the customer than a government activity. So if that's an ongoing problem, part of it might be also looking into some privatization of certain activities of the city of St. George.
As a city council, we, and definitely I feel that we respect and love our citizens. We want to do what you need us to do. We want to be responsible to you. And we spend many hours on our city's council discussing this very thing. We did just redo our website, hopefully to make it more user-friendly. And I'm sure Jimmy and I will be taking that back to the designers and letting them know at least there's a few people that didn't think it was great. We answer emails, we answer letters, we answer phone calls. We reorganized our entire permitting process and moved people upstairs and downstairs and changed positions just to be more efficient and helpful to those getting permits. And our accounts receivable department has been going through a process where we're trying to allow for credit card payment or all kinds of financial mechanisms to make it more friendly and easier for people to pay their utility bills.
I think the city presently is very, very user-friendly and citizen-friendly. I love the new website. I have no problem with the website whatsoever. Being a person that is Google certified for pay-per-click and organics, I'm sure there could be room for improvements, but I think we are a very user and citizen-friendly as we stand right now. I think one of the ways to improve would be to get rid of the closed-door persona. Why some people feel that the city operates behind closed doors, but get some feedback on that, see how we can improve upon that. Most, not all, but most of the city council members have their personal number right there listed on the website. Just a few weeks ago, I called Jimmy. He was on the way back from Salt Lake just to ask if he would be running again for city council. He answered the phone and proudly said yes, he would. Yes, he is rerunning again. So I think we have a great user-friendly, citizen-friendly right now the way it is, but I think there could be some areas we could improve upon there.
We want to, we're going to ask one more question. Actually, what we'll do is give you a couple of maybe 60 seconds to plan a closing statement that will be 60 seconds each. And I want to thank all of you, the audience, for being here. We appreciate it. We appreciate your questions, and it was kind of interesting to get a couple of questions that actually coordinated with the questions that we had assembled. We appreciate you being here. We'll start with Mark, and we'll just ask you to do a closing statement. And right, and we want to thank Casey for being our timer. And if you'll just start, just a closing statement, 60 seconds.
Mark Stallings, I currently serve, I have not mentioned this previously, but I am currently serving as a state central committee member with the Washington County Republican Party. I'm a professional volunteer. My wife, who's sitting in the back, has to constantly remind me that I still have a family to support. But I think I love serving the people. I'm a very active citizen in this community, very active with the Huntsman World Senior Games, very active with the pickleball community. And I think I would be a great choice as a new addition to the city council. I'm a God-fearing man, I'm a family man. As I mentioned previously, I believe one of the only competitors with a child in elementary school. I think I bring a lot to the table, and I certainly would encourage your vote for Mark Stallings. Mark with a C, M stands for motivated, A stands for accountable, R stands for responsible, and C stands for committed. Mark with a C, vote for me.
That's great. I am Betty Ariel, and I have enjoyed this experience tremendously. I have learned a lot, and there's many more things that we can do as a city, and I appreciate the discussion tonight and the ideas. I just think that we need to be fair. A lot of times there are things that happen in our city that are really underhanded, and it's not our city that does it. It's our citizens. And I have been a vice president of government relations for a large company. I have worked for the Bureau of Land Management and for Congress twice. And I understand regulation. We don't want it. We want our businesses to thrive. I understand land situations, public land and private land. I understand service of people, to serve our people, and that is what I desire to do. And I ask you to give me 4 more years as a city councilwoman and give me the chance to continue to give you excellent government service. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Dixie Republican Forum for hosting this tonight. I think activities like this are really important, and I hope there's a lot more of this to inform the electorate before the election and before the primary. My wife and I work in urban renewal in the center of downtown. We have hundreds of people walking to at least 100 people walking to our store every day. Maybe 2/3 of those are residents of the city of St. George, 1/3 are visitors. I have a front row seat to hear why the visitors come and what they like about St. George. I also get a lot of feedback from residents of what they'd like to see done. The main underlying theme I hear is that they would like a more active and idea-driven city council. It was mentioned how few people come to city council meetings. My sense is that there's an impression that things are already decided by the time it gets to the city council. And I'd like to see the city council be more active body that got more feedback from the citizens and more discussion where the citizens were able and felt comfortable bringing their concerns to the city council. Please visit my website, stgeorge.com, spell out Saint, to follow my campaign, and I would appreciate your support.
My name is Lane Rano, and I walk every morning, 2 miles every morning, and I walk pretty fast, 4 miles an hour. I'm going to enter the senior games, and I expect to win the fast walking for my age group, which is age 45 to 48. The reason I look so bad is because I've had a wonderful life and a wonderful wife. I do a television interview show, and if you want to see a little bit more about me, you can go there. It's called A Story to Tell. Just Google my name, Lane Rano, and click on A Story to Tell. It'll take you right there. I've interviewed some minor celebrities, and Jimmy Hughes, and Betty, and what's your name down there at the end? And many people in the audience. I'd like to interview you. It's called A Story to Tell. Thank you for being here. All you need to know about this election, at least for one seat, is the swindle sheet here that my wife helped me make up. Give me a call. My phone number's on there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help you.
I'm glad I'm a celebrity to at least someone, but I have really enjoyed serving the community, and that's really what we do on the city council. At least that's what I've tried to do as a city council member. I am not there for one single issue. I am not there to push some kind of an agenda. I have been there to try to serve the people. I have maintained, and I'll say it again, I am always open to comments. I'm even okay to change my mind on things. And I love feedback. I promise to continue to do that. If I am reelected, I think it's important to note there's been a lot of things said that there may be another side to, and I'm happy to answer those questions. I've always said, hold my feet to the fire. These elections are a good thing. These discussions are a good thing, but we need to make sure we understand the whole scenario. I am one of the things I like to say is we, as St. George City, we have a wonderful history. Let's not throw away everything that's old. Let's take what's good, keep it, and let's make it better. And let's accept those new ideas that are good and move on with them. We have a great, diverse population here, and I love St. George, and I think we have a great city. Jimmy Hughes, It's IE. Just remember that. It's not like the girly Y, it's IE. I have a website. My phone number's out there. Love to talk to you.
Jimmy, there's nothing girly about you. Just want you to know that. You know, if and when I'm elected to the city council, it really is about improving a citizen experience. And I really believe strong, and that's why I'm running, is if there's two things that can take place. One, if we can improve our code enforcement aspect, and we make the best hiring decisions when city management starts to change. Those two elements in and of itself will trickle down into positive experiences for our citizens. I really believe it comes to that simple. All the other things are part of that, but those two things are the critical mass out there. And I hope, you know, if this process of running for city office kills me, that Jimmy will take care of me just fine at the end of the day. Again, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about my thought process, whoiskendall.com, and I have a feedback section there. I'd love to hear from everybody on that. I'd like to respond personally to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, and your group. It's being my first experience with this. This has been really interesting for me. I never pictured myself ever doing something like this, but I'm elated that I did. I mean, we have great people here, and I know we're missing a couple, and they're all good people that want to do the right thing. You've got a tough decision ahead of you. So I've sat here and said to myself, why me? Why would you vote for Craig? I've spent my lifetime in the public sector, dealing with the public, dealing with parents, good situations, bad situations. I get teased a lot. The reason why my hair is white is I was a high school principal for 13 years and just lose a few ball games and they want a new coach and on it goes. It's not about math, English, and science. But I have a great love for this city. This is my home. I raised my kids here. I'd love to have them come back. I want them to come back, but we need to continue to have a great city where we can have those kind of businesses that want to be here, the people that want to be here, provide those services that we need. And I, for one, want to say thank you to those council members here. I failed to see Joe here, and thank you, Joe, besides the other three that are here, for the job that you've done, because I know you care about this city as those that have come before you, and thank you, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Again, Micheline Perez, and I teach over at Dixie University. I'm here because I'm committed and because I believe in what's great and wonderful, which is obviously the people that were here. As I was speaking to our wonderful host beforehand, they sent about 500 emails out, and look who's here. It's you, because you're the ones that really matter, because you're the ones that are committed, just like each of us that are up here and just like me, because I want to dedicate my life to taking care of people and making things better, which is also why I'm a teacher, because it's sure not for the pay. Just saying. But I also want to make sure that there's still a place here that we can all live and where the next generations can live, which is why I'm dedicated to water preservation, gray water systems, and making sure that we're not watering our lawns with culinary grade water. So August 11th at the polls, Micheline Perez. You don't have to be able to pronounce it to be able to vote for it.
How nice it is to be able to come tonight, and we have a sergeant at arms who has been sitting in the back, and it's been a civil evening. Great dialogue. I've really enjoyed. My name is Brian Theriot, and if you want a candidate on St. George City Council who's going to cross his T's and dots his I's, you get Theriot. And I am committed to that. What a wonderful evening it is for us to sit here and talk about the city that we love and the area and community that we love and grow up in. And I think you have, there's two candidates that didn't make it here. So we're committed here. Look at us here, a Friday evening. And may God bless you, and have an enjoyable weekend. I've got 15 seconds left. I'll cut.
We probably all should be committed for being here on a Friday night in this hot room for 2 hours, but We care about the future of our city. We care about good government. We thank the candidates. We thank our moderators. We thank you, the citizens, for being here, and we are adjourned.